Mounting calls for the Special Investigating Unit report on the 150 million rand digital vibes communications tender to be made public. This comes after the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, also known as SCOPA, was asked to delay a briefing on the matter by the SIU due to additional information added to the report, which is still with President Cyril Ramaphosa. To help me unpack the implications of this, I'm joined now by former SCOPA chairperson, Themba Godi. Mr. Godi, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Now, the presidency has responded to receiving the SIU report. The president has got the report. The president is looking at the report, but they are saying the president will keep the public abreast in a manner that preserves information that may be used as a subject of prosecution, civil action, or disciplinary procedures. What does that tell us about government's attitude towards dealing with financial mismanagement in the public sector when it comes to this particular matter?
Yeah, thank you very much. Firstly, I had come to the conclusion that it would be best if SIU reports were simultaneously sent to the President as well as Parliament and the Auditor General, because we've had instances where reports will be submitted to the Presidency and it will take months before they are released, which then delays the process of taking action and the process of the public knowing what is contained in those reports, because what is written there is supposed to be public knowledge. I don't see how any of what is in the report can interfere with any process, whether criminal or disciplinary. It just tells you that sometimes, as we have always seen, these reports are managed to accommodate political considerations and not so much to have a principled and unyielding fight against corruption.
Do you think, and some have already said, that possibly the president is kicking for touch here because politically this is an awkward position for him to be in, to have to deal with the Minister of Health?
Well, that thought crossed my mind. But like I said, if we have a principled approach, it doesn't matter whether you get 3 or 4 reports at the same time. If you're principled, it is your principle that is going to see you through. But if these things are done because there are some shenanigans that are involved, you'll always have all these political calculations, and it is the factoring in of political considerations in matters of corruption that has all along compromised the fight against corruption. I can say, look at the issue around the PPE procurement in Gauteng, where the former CFO said he got the list of companies to be contracted from the Premier's office. We don't know what happened, except that we heard that there was nothing against the Premier and the matter ended just there. So once you bring in political considerations to criminal conduct or to conduct that contravenes the law, that's where you're going to have problems.
Now, 131 cases referred to the NPA. Shamila Batoy, he's saying that she's concerned, particularly when it comes to bringing the reports to Parliament, which what you mentioned earlier on, about revealing too many details on active investigations being provided to Parliament at that time, saying that there needs to be an agreement reached that you do not jeopardize certain areas by taking these reports to Parliament. What's your view?
Well, you see, it is this disjointed approach to public administration that leads to this situation, because meeting with Shamila Batoy is not the first time that Parliament interacts with the NPA. I mean, under my watch, we had many meetings, we dealt with these kind of issues, and there were protocols that were agreed upon in terms of how we should work. And I think nobody wants cases that are under active investigation to be, explained in public in terms of the minute details. But there has to be a sense in which Parliament and the public can have confidence that there is work that is being done. I mean, if you take the stain of issue, the stonewalling you know, I presented a memo to the NPA on the 28th of May saying, but what are you doing? And they said, well, we'll respond to you, but they haven't up to now. So my point is, yes, you may not give all the details, but to what extent are you able to give the public a sense that work is being done? Because that has been the major outcry.
Talking about work being done, do we have capacity to recoup some of these monies? I mean, for example, the order was issued on the 150 million contract. Only 22 million was able to be frozen. I mean, will we be able to get back any of these monies that were irregularly spent?
Well, you see, the question of capacity is twofold. One, it will talk to the amount of women power that you have to do the job. And secondly, it talks to the capabilities that are there. And I think when it comes to capability, I think that's where we're still running short, especially if you move beyond public sector corruption, which seem to be the vogue. But beyond it, you find that there are problems with their capacity. In terms of recouping the money, you know, there's a piece of legislation that says when you recoup money from those who have stolen from government, you need to make sure that you don't bring unnecessary hardships to the people concerned. Now, you see, that is a very, very tricky piece in the legislation, because then it might limit you in terms of what you might get. So I think it is something that may need to be looked at in terms of, like you are saying, here we're talking about 150 million, but so far only, 22 million? And what happens to the rest? It is lost. For what? For nothing. So I think we do have shortcomings in terms of how we deal with these matters to ensure that the public, at the end of the day, is not shortchanged by crooked people.
Former Scopa chairperson Themba Godi, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us tonight on In Focus.